This is Kessler Froch from London. We're in Sheffield for the pre-America press conference of Kell Brook ahead of his fight with David Alexander on February 23rd in Detroit. With me I've got promoter Eddie Hearn. You alright, Eddie?
I'm alright, Coogan. I feel a bit bad doing all these interviews with you because it's a bit of overkill, you know?
Who am I meant to interview? Lowell?
I know, but it's just, I feel it's a bit overkill, but you know.
That's alright, listen, we'll keep it relevant. 5 weeks ago, Kell Brook, I see a picture of him on Twitter the other day, looks in fantastic shape as it is already. So when Dominic Ingle said that he's ahead of plan, as in training wise. So what sort of mood did you think he was in talking to the media today?
Really confident, really focused. Like you say, he's in phenomenal shape. We've got scientists and strength and conditioning coach and nutritionists living with him 24/7. He's got the best support team anyone could possibly have, and he's ready to do it. You know, he believes he's going to win. We all believe he's going to win, and now it's just a case of putting the icing on the cake, some top quality sparring coming up, and then getting out to Detroit and doing the business.
Do you think that Kell's ever felt the pressure he's going to feel out there, or is he going to feel the pressure out there going into over there to America? Like I said, in some people's eyes, not the favourite. So, how do you think he's going to cope with that?
The journey that Kell's been on over the last 16 months with us is gearing him up for a night like this, topping bills in big arenas in front of 6, 7, 10,000 for the Matthew Hatton fight. And we took him over to America as well to fight on the Froch Ward undercard. He shouldn't expect a hostile atmosphere in Detroit because I don't think he'll get it. I'm hoping that we get plenty of Brits coming over for the journey. I think he's going to have a lot of noise for him in the stadium, but there's nothing that he's never experienced before walking out into that arena. I think it's set up for about 4,500, 5,000. He's boxed in big arenas. He's boxed with more noise, but he hasn't boxed anyone of the quality of Devin Alexander, that's for sure. But I think that's going to push Kell Brook to another level. But he's well prepared. I don't think there's anything that's going to faze him that week. Devin Alexander's not got a hardcore following, big support. Yeah, we're in America and there'll be some Americans there, but I think they're going to enjoy watching Kell Brook box. They're going to enjoy his style. They're going to enjoy his look, his speed, his power, and I think he's going to win a lot of new fans when he wins that title.
I know you said you were satisfied with the level of judging that's going to be out there. Is it on the back of your mind though that you feel that maybe Kell is going to have to stop him or knock him out if it goes to a points win, that he may not get that?
Yeah, we've been pushing with the IBF and the local commission. One neutral judge, one American judge, one English judge, of which it looks like it's been confirmed. So I think we'll get a fair crack at the whip. Whenever you box away from home, you have to expect, if it's really close, you're going to lose the fight. That's just life. If it was in Britain, it'd be exactly the same. So we know the situation. It's not as if we're not aware. So we've got to do everything we can to avoid that. Let's not make it close. Let's not make it go 12 rounds. I believe he's going to stop him. I really do. But whenever you box away from home, you always run that risk. So, like I said, I'm confident we'll get a fair crack at the whip, but let's not find out.
Can you give us any details on tickets? And obviously the venue has changed now as well. It's no longer the Joe Louis Arena.
No, it's the Masonic Theatre out in Detroit. Beautiful venue, actually holds about 4,500, 5,000. I've been pushing Golden Boy for ticket information now for a while. They've been very helpful because they've helped us change the fight, and they've got a lot of work to do to get the venue in place. Fans on Twitter of Kell's, bugging me for ticket information. I'm trying, I'm pushing. I believe we're going to get it this week, and tickets are going to go on sale from matchroomboxing.com and from our offices. I want all the British fans sitting together. I'm going to put on parties for British fans. We're going to have an after party and a weigh-in. We're going to have an after party for the fight with Kell, with that beautiful red and gold belt on show. And I urge fans to come over. Listen, I know it's difficult, I know it's expensive, but I believe Kell Brook's going to go on and be one of the biggest stars British boxing's ever had, and you've got the opportunity to be there on that special night when he first won the world title. And there's nothing like an away day, Coog, is there? You know it as a gooner, although you don't get many away wins these days, do you? But, do you go away?
I go away sometimes. When I can go away, I do go away.
There's nothing like it, is there? Being part of a small unit of fans that are travelling, with the Union Jack waving and the songs chanting at the weigh-in. We like to make a spectacle of ourselves, don't we? And we want them out there.
Do you know what? Today, obviously, is Kell's last media day before he'll go out to America, or the chance anyone will get to speak to him. I want to talk about something else because I feel like the day's sort of being overshadowed a little bit by your announcement today of Froch and Kessler. Is it just timing that's just happened to be announced today, obviously from your talks yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, this wasn't an announcement today, so if it was an announcement, I mean, as in for Kell, I probably wouldn't have done it on the same day, but unfortunately we had no choice but to let people know that we'd reached a deal today. Just a huge fight, you know. It's one of those things you just can't keep it in, you know, and everyone's talking, man, and of course we're keeping people up to speed on Twitter, what's happening, and so are Sowlands. And when a fight like that gets made, it doesn't get any bigger, you know, to make that fight, but to make it in Britain and to give the British fans a night like that to remember, because we all know what kind of fight it's going to be. You know, I was so proud, and you sort of can't wait to tell everyone, you know, and I'm so pleased for Cole, because he deserves this kind of night more than anyone else. And finally he's going to get what he deserves, and he's going to become front page rather than back page. You know, it's that big a fight.
What was the actual, if there was any, what was the stumbling blocks, or what was the actual hold-ups, or, you know, why, you know, if there was any?
The only stumbling block was the time. You know, we had got the purse bids today for the Adonis Stevenson fight, so we had to get a deal done before then. But when you're talking about two huge names like Froch and Kessler, you know, Mikhail Kessler can box in Copenhagen in front of 10,000 people against you. You know, he's got plenty of other options. So to go into a fight like that with Carl Froch, where he knows that they're going to stand in front of each other toe to toe and knock lumps out of each other, as you become more successful and get a few quid in the bank, do you really want those kind of nights? Do you? I mean, I wouldn't. Would you? You know, but that's because I'm not a warrior. Well, you know, but I'm not, and Froch is, and so's Kessler. You know, so it's just a stage of they said to each other, look, we love it. And Froch loves it. He loves getting in there and exchanging blows. You know, and so does Kessler. So you know what kind of fight it's going to be. And, you know, to bring him to the UK was a coup, but he's a man of his word. And, you know, it was a pleasure dealing with the Sowlands as well, because everyone's going to have a great night, and may the best man win.
What can you tell us about venue, tickets?
All kinds of speculation at the moment. We'll hold a press conference in the next couple of weeks for full details, tickets, venue, date. Looking at end of April, May. Looking at London at the O2, MEN Arena. You know, their team were keen that it wasn't in Nottingham, because Carl didn't go to Copenhagen when he fought over there, boxing HEARN, which is not a problem. You know, the only place we could hold it in Nottingham is outdoors at the City Ground, and at end of April, May, that's not really possible anyway. So I feel London is a great place for the fight. I think it's got that kind of feel to it, and of course expect 5,000 or 6,000 Danes coming over to London for that fight. So it's going to be a great atmosphere, always brilliant atmosphere when there's two sets of fans of those numbers. Just the hairs on the back of my neck standing up just thinking about that night, you know, the ring walk, when the bell goes, it's that kind of fight, you know, it's one for the ages, and so many big fights get hyped up and never live up to expectations, but you know this can only be a classic, you know, two pure warriors just ready to go toe to toe all over again.
Is what happens on the undercard of Froch Kessler 2, is that dependent on what happens with your fighters between now and then?
Yeah, I mean, I was asked this today, who's on the undercard? It's difficult because it's May the 26th. What I can tell you is it will be a big undercard, a great undercard, that a main event like that deserves. But, you know, I mean, we've got Brook, Bellew, Barker, Frampton, Reese, you know, all these different fighters could support, two of them could support. You just don't know what's going to happen. Kell wins against Alexander, Frampton beats Martinez, Barker could fight Macklin, Andy Lee, you know, these kind of fights. But we need a big undercard, plenty of title fights, plenty of close fights. It's difficult, you know, because sometimes when you do a show like that, you put on a great undercard and you're sitting there watching it, and you look round and everyone's in the bar, and you think, I'm spending all this money on an undercard fight, no one's watching it. They all come for Froch Kessler. But, you know, we owe it to our broadcast and we owe it to the fans at home to build up with a great show. And, of course, to the hardcore boxing fans that have bought tickets and sit in their seats all night to watch great fights on the undercard as well. And, you know, it's not going to be cheap to come. Of course, you know, we know how expensive boxing tickets are anyway, even for a standard show. So I think that if you can make people leave that night and go, wow, that Froch Kessler was one of the greatest fights I've ever seen, but do you remember the other stuff? Then we get value for money. That's always nice.
You've got a show coming up at Wembley on March the 9th, headlined by Darren Barker, Lee Purdy, Carson Jones. Potential opponents for Darren Barker, who are you looking at?
Looking at someone sort of fringe world level to help Darren get back. Looking at Sergio Mora, looking at Brian Vera, looking at Elvin Ayala, Zenjai Zunjurek, if I said that right. You know, these kind of top 10 fighters.
Andy Lee?
No, we spoke about the Andy Lee fight, but he wants to have a couple of fights under Adam Booth. He's just getting back into things. He's going to box on our February the 9th card. But Andy Lee against Darren Barker is a fight I'd really like to make for the summer. I think that's a good fight for both guys. And this fight for Darren is another step up from Kerry Hope, and kind of like the final fight before we stick him in to a big one, a career-defining one, you know. So he's basically got this fight on March the 9th, want to make it as competitive. I like the Sergio Mora fight. I think he's a character. And, you know, Barker's ready, really, after that, to throw into a world title fight, or to a Lee, or to a Macklin, you know, those kind of fights.
The week after your show, Frank Warren's just announced a bumper bill at the same venue. Burns Vasquez, George Groves fighting for the European title. Nathan Cleverly also defending his world title. What are you making of that bill?
It's a great bill. You know, it's one thing in making a bill and announcing it. It's another one holding it together and making it materialise on the night. Sometimes you get all kinds of bad luck. I mean, look at our Christmas cracker show. Looked like one of the best bills London's ever seen, and then at the end of it, just looked very average. Sometimes things don't work out, but you know, hopefully that'll hold together. I think it's, you know, it's easy for me to say here and say, oh, I support other British fighters, but I want to see big fights in the UK, I really do. And the more big fights that we can put together in the UK, the better for boxing. You know, it doesn't matter if it's on my show or if it's on Frank Warren's show. Of course, I want them to be on my show. You know, we've got to look after number one, which is, you know, Matchroom and our fighters. But those kind of fights being made are great, and I hope other fighters, promoters can step up to the plate, because at the moment it really only looks like it's us and Frank that are really trying to make a fist of it. And you know, it's a great show. You know, we're going to have a great show as well. Are our fights going to be as high profile as theirs? Probably not. You know, but we'll make sure they're good fights. They're all as close to 50-50 as we can, and developing fighters, and you know, back-to-back fights and weeks at Wembley. So,
does it affect either promoter because the shows are sort of in consecutive weeks at the same venue? Does that have anything to do with it?
Yeah, it's not ideal, but you know, when you look at the fighters that we'll have on, they've got their own groups of fans anyway. So Darren Barker, Lee Purdy, Eric Ocheng, John Ryder, Waddy Camacho, Larry Eckendale, you know, so it doesn't really matter. I mean, of course it would affect it, and actually Wembley Arena, we were the first to book that date, and Wembley Arena phoned us up and said, look, we've got Frank Warren wants a date after, what do you think? I said, look, to be honest with you, it's not ideal. You know, it's not. We'll definitely lose ticket sales for it, and they've announced a great show, but listen, that's just competition in business. I mean, it's not a problem. I'm sure he didn't do it deliberately, and we didn't take the week before deliberately to try and, you know, take ticket sales from his show. But I think that every fighter's got their own following. Our show is called London's Finest. It's London fighters, and their show is bringing people, you know, you've got Cleverly on, obviously, you've got Burns on. So two different types of shows. You know, sometimes he'll do a better show than us. Sometimes we'll do a better show than him. But it's healthy competition. It's good for the sport. And, you know, by him announcing those kind of fights pushes me to try and go one further and announce bigger fights, which today was Froch Kessler too. So, you know, but it's good. You know, we need to feed off each other's competition. And it's pushing me every day to try and do better shows, bigger fights. And I'm sure he feels the same. You know, now that I've got Froch Kessler too, he'll want to do something bigger. I'm not sure there is anything bigger, but you know, you need that. You can't just get complacent in life and sit around saying, I'm number one, I've got all the shows, because I'm not. You know, I'm fighting to be number one. I want to be number one. You know, but I've got to prove it. I'm just a new kid on the block who's showing a little bit of, you know, promise, and it's getting better, but I've got a lot to do. I've got a lot to learn, and some shows are going to be average and some shows are going to be brilliant, but you're only as good as your last show, or the last show you announced. So right now I'm pretty good, but tomorrow is another day.
Have you stopped your fighters from appearing on BUNCEY's show? Because I've read some stuff on Twitter yesterday with a bit of thing going back and forth between Bellew and you and BUNCEY. So what's the score with that? Have you ever said to your fighters that you didn't want them going on their show?
Absolutely not. BUNCEY asked me, I think once, if one of my fighters wants to go on his show, and the answer was no. I can't remember the reason why. Every media opportunity is assessed individually. And if my fighters don't want, it's a bit like a fight, When someone said to me about Ricky Burns fighting Gavin Rees, why didn't you let him fight? I present my fighters with the opportunity. If they want my advice, I'll give it to them. If they want to take the fight, they can take it in a heartbeat. If they want to go on Box Nation, BUNCEY's out, they can go on it. You can't go on there. I'm not that kind of bloke. But BUNCEY, for some reason, thinks all our fighters are banned from the show. If they can't make it or they just don't want to do it, it doesn't really matter, But they've never asked me for Tony Bellew to go on, and they've never asked Tony Bellew. So listen, he backtracked a little bit. It's more of a misunderstanding than anything. I like BUNCEY. I like what he does for the sport, And a big shout out to Wingy as well. Become a little bit of a fan of his lately. Real hardcore.
Yeah, I like Wingy. He posts his predictions and things up.
Yeah, but it's real hardcore, isn't it? Probably a lot of people might not have heard of it. So I like Wingy. He's good. I like people like that, a little bit off the cuff, who he's just the biggest boxing nut I've ever met. But it's not about restricting fighters from going on other shows. It's nothing to do with being petty. If they don't want to do it, or they haven't got time, or something else is available, they won't do it. And I think we've been asked once, and I've turned that down, and all of a sudden I've banned my fighters from going on Box Nation. It doesn't work like that. If there's an opportunity of a bigger audience elsewhere, we'll do that. If not, if they want to go on a show, do that. It's not, I wouldn't ban them, Sky wouldn't ban them. It's not that kind of ship.
Prize fighter this weekend in Wolverhampton, and then you've got prize fighter again next month, where you're not going to be there, you'll be in Detroit. But I want to talk about that heavyweight prize fighter. A-Force is back. Is this? We keep saying it every time, but is this last chance saloon for Audley again?
Yeah, it's difficult, because I come in for a bit of stick when I put Audley in that prize fighter, as I expected. Yet the fight, it's sold out pretty much. And it's going to do the biggest viewing figures that a prize fighter's done for some time. So it's getting the balance right of delivering for my broadcaster and delivering for fight fans. It's sold out, so I know people want to go and watch it. It's just the hardcore boxing fans that say, what are you doing? And, sometimes I have to do things for broadcasters, and sometimes I have to do things for hardcore fight fans. It's getting the mix right, And whatever you say about Audley Harrison, for some reason, people want to go and watch him. People want to tune in to watch him on TV. I don't think he'll win it, to be honest with you. I think he's too old now. I think he's done. But listen, he prepared well for Price and he got banged out early. But someone said to me the other day, you got to remember, Audley Harrison is a top 10 heavyweight in the country. Agree? He lost to David Hay, a unified world champion. He lost to David Price, who's a class act. So it's not as if he's awful, but he talked himself up like he's Muhammad Ali. So he's got to take the flack that comes with it, But to go in prize fight, he's well within his rights to go in prize fight. I mean, he's a former European champion, world title challenger, Olympic gold medalist. He deserves to go in there more than Martin Rogan, more than Travis Walker, more than Ian Lewinson. So you can't deny him a spot in prize fight. A prize fighter is what prize fighter is. And another thing I've got to say as well, reading the forums non-stop, is I know that the boxing fans are always going to criticise prize fighter because it's not their thing. But don't panic about more prize fighters, blah, 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 blah. We do 6 prize fighters a year. So just because we got one in January, one in February, doesn't mean we're having another one in February, another one in March. And all of a sudden there's, so after January and February, we probably won't do a prize fighter till April or May. So just chill out about prize fighter. It does its job. And I know that the hardcore boxing fans are not huge fans of prize fighter, but it does its job. And, the February 23rd one particularly will rate really, really well and give us that build-up going into Kell Brook's fight. And there's always an ethos, there's always a method behind the madness. So just bear with us. And again, every prize fighter brings something a little bit different. The one this Saturday is like 6 unbeaten fighters, 5 huge punchers, a chance for someone in that division to catapult themselves into a British title or domestic title honours. So that's going to be entertaining because everyone's going to be absolutely going for gold, and it's $2,000 a stoppage or a KO, and it's going to get expensive, but it's going to be entertaining. And sometimes I take too much notice of the boxing forums and Twitter, but I read them non-stop because I want to know what everyone's thinking, and you can't deliver for everybody all of the time. But sometimes I read some of them and just think, you got it all wrong. Give me a call in the office, but they never do they, Cook?
No, they don't. And just finally, I've noticed something about you. I don't know if you're aware you do this, but when you become bored, you sing a lot. Yeah, you like make up your own little songs. You sing along to the radio. I don't know if you realise you do it, but you do it quite a lot. Where I've been in a car in the back and just taking note of it. Yeah, you just make. I don't know their football chants or what they are. Leighton Orient, they probably sing, but yeah, you seem to like a bit of a croon.
What people don't know about me, I've got a great voice, Cook. I won't do it here, but I promise anyone who comes to not AC, or AC or Detroit for the Gavin Rees or Kell Brook fight, we'll do a bit of karaoke, you and me, and I'll show you one of my special songs.
Are you willing to look for Mike with me as well?
Mike.
Mike on the boardwalk.
Yeah, I miss Mike. Kell Froch. If you haven't seen that one, check out that IFILM London clip. But yeah, that's a couple of special weeks there, and you'll be along for the ride. You know, Brook, Rees against Broner, February 16th, Brook against Alexander. You know, that's what it's all about. Big fights, you know, massive fights and big occasions, and walking out to the ring with a squeaky bum and not knowing what's going to happen, and you know, taking a gamble with the flip side that is just huge. You know, and then coming back and then getting ready for Froch Kessler. It's good times at the moment, good times for British boxing. I think people should appreciate what's happening in British boxing because things have got really competitive again. There's a lot of big fights getting made, a lot of young stars coming through, and you know, it's a good place right now.
Right, Eddie Hearn, thank you very much for talking to IFILM London. Yeah, like I said, plenty of things that are keeping us going. Press conference on Thursday for Barker and Purdy. Just going to leave you with one thought. I think you should sign a heavyweight.
Yeah. I'm not going to sign... I mean, you don't just sign anyone. You sign someone who's... For me, right, the pedigree and stuff like that doesn't really matter. Obviously, they've got to have talent, and they've got, you know, I'll speak to people who I really respect in the game to find out if they have. But sometimes you sit down with a fighter and you look in their eyes and you just know this is going to be a great journey. Probably most recently, Tom Stalker. You know, when you sit down with Stalker and you listen to him rabbit on in that hard Scouse accent about what he wants to achieve and his family, and you become engaged with them, and you think, listen, I'm going to have to make a huge investment in you in the short term, and I don't want to be spending money and lumping out money to put you on undercards in Belfast when you're not selling a ticket if I don't particularly like you, or I don't really think you've got the ambition. So we don't just sign anyone, but of course we want a heavyweight, you know, and we've got the platform to give a heavyweight massive exposure on Sky, and we're crying out for one. So if you know a good one, let me know.
This is Kugan Cassius with Eddie Hearn here in Sheffield for IFILM London. Thank you very much.
Thank you.